Lurking in the treetops, we can see the outline of one of nature's few success stories, the Cooper's hawk. Traditionally a forest raptor, this aerial predator is fast becoming a fixture of human landscapes across much of North America. A crow-sized raptor, the Cooper's hawk is perfectly built for life among the trees. With its short rounded wings and relatively long tail, this hawk is built for speed and maneuverability, which aid it in its pursuit of its primary food source, other birds. Adults can be identified by the rusty-colored barring on their breasts and flanks. Their backs tend to be blue-gray, with their tails exhibiting alternating light and dark bands of the same. Their heads often sport a darker colored crown, and their eyes become a brilliant bright orange or red as they get older. Juveniles are much more cryptically colored and are generally brown on their backs and streaked with brown on their breasts. Cooper's hawks prey primarily on medium-sized birds like blackbirds, woodpeckers, and blue jays. Though they are fully capable of hunting on the wing, telemetric data suggests that they usually hunt from a perch, scanning for unsuspecting passers-by. This unwitting woodpecker is so engrossed in his own meal that he is unaware of the fact that he's about to become one. Cooper's hawks will often ambush their prey. Hiding in an evergreen, this hungry predator spots a flock of starlings. He waits for just the right moment before making his move. These birds rely on the element of surprise and have been known to use stationary objects like trees and shrubs to their advantage, keeping such obstacles between themselves and their prey until the very last second. Patient and calculated, this efficient predator is the bane of many a songbird's existence. Cooper's hawks do eat some mammals like chipmunks and other small rodents, but a gray squirrel probably doesn't lose a lot of sleep over becoming a menu item for this raptor. Coops do make a habit of plucking their prey before eating it. This is usually done at what has been called the plucking post, or more aptly, the picnic table, which usually comprises of a horizontal branch. Food is usually eaten quickly and stored in an expansion of the esophagus known as the crop. Except for many of the feathers, they often eat every bit of their prey, including the bones. They waste very little. But as for this flicker, well, everybody's dropped a little food off the table before. Ingested feathers and other undigested portions of their meals are later regurgitated as a pellet or casting. Owls also regurgitate pellets, but often bones remain undigested. Catching their prey is no easy task, and they often have to defend it. Crows and hawks have long had an antagonistic relationship towards one another. Here, a coops can be seen hiding its prey from the crows above in a behavior known as mantling. Though Cooper's hawks will drink occasionally, they acquire most of the moisture they need from their food. When food is plentiful and they acquire a surplus, They will often store or cache the uneaten portions on horizontal limbs throughout their territory. After eaten, the birds will clean their beaks by rubbing them against a branch or limb. This behavior is known as feeking, and it not only cleans the beak, but it helps to keep it in good condition. The beak, like a fingernail, continues to grow through the life of the bird, and this behavior helps to keep it from becoming overgrown. To chase down prey, a coop's feathers need to be in top condition. They spend a great deal of time cleaning and preening themselves. And I mean they preen a lot. So look out, birds, 'cause this hawk means business. The problem is, by the time you see it coming, it's probably too late. But there is another side to this predator. As spring rolls around, everything is coming to life. Flowers are blooming, and in the distance, a soon-to-be familiar sound is heard. The alarm call of the female Cooper's hawk alerts us to her presence. Occasionally, she will give another call as well.
The male is also nearby, but being that he's a third smaller than the female, his call is higher in pitch.
The mated pair can often be seen in close proximity to one another this time of year. Dr. Robert Rosenfield, an expert on Cooper's hawks, has been studying these birds in Wisconsin for over 2 decades.
As breeding birds, the Cooper's hawk, Scipula cooperi, is distributed throughout a good part of the North America continent. They breed as far north as into southern Canada, and basically throughout prairie, throughout eastern deciduous forest, western montane forests. They use just about every kind of habitat situation you can possibly think of, and principally nesting in trees. They breed down as far south as probably northern Mexico. So it's a very large and broad scale distribution of breeding birds.
The male spends much of his time attempting to win favor with his mate. And one of the ways he tries to prove his worthiness is through his nest building skills.
Nest building is predominantly the male. That isn't to say that the female doesn't have an active role, and I've seen pairs, females within pairs that actually do a substantial amount of building. But on average, it's the males that do the bulk of the building by far.
He carefully selects just the right sticks for the nest, nothing too dead, nothing too green, and announces his arrival at the nest with a quick kick. Maybe in hawk this means, "See, I'm busy." The female asserts herself in what appears to be a supervisory role. It's almost as if she is telling him, "Hey, get back to work." Naturally, he obliges. Nope, not this one. This'll do. Here's a good one. He started the nest in March, and it'll take him about a month to complete it. With a little help from her, of course. They are quite nimble and tiptoe about the branches with ease, searching out just the right twig for the job. The male often plucks sticks in the vicinity of his mate, seemingly in an attempt to make her aware of his diligence. He also does much of the hunting, and this time he announces his arrival with breakfast. A good dad will have to supply food not only for himself, but also for his mate and their chicks. He really puts on a show. Here he's arrived with food and calls to his companion while displaying his bright white undertail coverts. If all goes well, he will eventually be rewarded for his efforts. But there's much left to do before she's ready to lay her eggs. There is still a great deal of nest building that needs to be done. Cooper's hawks will occasionally reuse and rebuild old nests, but they generally construct new ones in the same area. So it's back to plucking sticks. She does what she can to help, and her larger size allows her to carry larger sticks back to the nest. Well, sometimes. Don't you think that's just a little too big? But sometimes you just have to know when you're whooped. Hubby looks on unamused. To make sure the nest can withstand the elements, every stick has to be placed just right. With their recent comeback, even juvenile coops can occasionally establish territories and breed. The nest building instinct is strong, and though this particular bird has never built a nest before, it appears to know exactly what it is doing.
And nest building, at least here in Wisconsin, is markedly related with copulatory activity. And one of the highest copulatory frequencies that occurs in birds around the world occurs in Cooper's hawks. And our estimate of some data about 10 or 15 years ago suggests that for a particular clutch of eggs, the pair may be copulating around 380 times, far more than is necessary to probably fertilize a clutch of 3 to 5 eggs.
In other words, Cooper's hawks mate often, and I mean they mate a lot. All humor aside, haven't you ever wondered how birds mate? It is really a very well orchestrated maneuver. With daggers for toes, this action can be rather hazardous, so the male carefully balls up his feet during copulation. The male balances himself on the female's back while the two simultaneously move their long tails into and out of the way. Finally, it is all consummated with what has been termed a cloacal kiss. More than you wanted to know? Well, now you don't have to ask again. By sometime in April, Mom has usually laid anywhere from 1 to 6 eggs. She handles nearly all the incubation and does so for close to a month. She hides, warms, and protects the eggs, and eventually the chicks will hatch. As the eggs begin hatching, Dad now has to start providing food for his youngsters. So far, 3 of the 5 eggs have hatched. The chicks will grow fast and require a lot of food. Mom picks apart the bird that Dad caught and feeds the bits to her young ones. She gives an alarm call to let everyone know she means business. After feeding her white downy kids, she carefully enters the nest to incubate the remaining eggs. A week has passed and the chicks have grown considerably. Looking closely, you can see a white dot at the end of each of the chicks' beaks. This calcified structure is known as an egg tooth and is used to facilitate hatching. The chicks use it to score the inside of the eggshell, and it's retained for about 10 days. They've been eaten a lot, but the nest has to remain clean, so they feebly work their little birdie behinds up to the edge of the nest to defecate. Mom returns to the nest after taking care of her own business. She seems aware of her deadly appendages and ever so gingerly enters the nest, gently pushing back the chicks. But weren't there 5 eggs in the nest? Where's the 5th chick?
A number of eggs are unhatched. It's not very common to find a nest where they have 2 or 3 eggs unhatched. When you find an unhatched egg, it's typically just that. It's a single egg. And often it's fertilized, and it may be related to asynchronous hatching, where the female starts incubating in earnest on the laying of the 3 eggs, should she lay 3 eggs. And then if she was to lay a 4th or 5th egg, that's usually going to be a day or 2 later than when she laid the 3 eggs, and she starts incubating on those 3 once she lays those 3, so to speak, such that the 4th and 5th egg are going to be incubated a bit later, and they're going to hatch later, and they're going to be smaller offspring and whatnot. But it could be that when those kids start hatching in the first 3 eggs, which are pretty much going to hatch on the same day because the eggs were warmed, day 0 at the same time, that maybe she can't tend to the 4th or 5th egg as well and keeping it warm.
It isn't too long before the male returns to the area with more food.
The males invariably give a food keck, which announces his arrival at the nest site with prey, and it's a kick, kick. Countless times have I relied upon, although I'm searching visually often to locate birds and or their nests, boy, just any sounds of those sorts, and I know that I'm close, and then I stop and I really focus very closely on looking for the birds. And it can be difficult to find, even once you hear the sounds that indicate that they're nesting nearby, because the nest sometimes is relatively high up in a tree, and it's not that big. It's a couple feet in diameter, maybe 10 inches deep, and they often will build on top of a squirrel nest. So from below, you might see a conglomeration of leaves and think, well, that's not a hawk nest because they're usually stick nests, but the stick nest actually could be on top of the squirrel nest.
Mom feeds her youngsters and again enters the nest very carefully to warm her chicks and the unhatched egg. By the 3rd week, only 4 chicks can be seen. Indeed, the 5th egg never did hatch, and the broken shell was found nearby. But 4 mouths are plenty to feed. The chicks are too big for Mom to sit on anymore, so she just stands guard at the edge of the nest. Soon, the Blue Jays announce Dad's arrival with another meal. Mom goes and meets him at the picnic table to make the food exchange. She returns to the nest with the kill. Meanwhile, Dad is off yet again to fetch the next course. Her kids have voracious appetites and are able to ingest large pieces. There is competition for the food, but Mom tries to dole out enough for everyone. Fat and happy, the chicks return to the edge of the nest to survey their neighborhood. Summer has arrived and the bugs and insects are about in full force. The coop's chicks are now able to stand and beginning to take on a more serious disposition. Their once spacious nest has become quite crowded, and Mom and Dad are now both off hunting to feed their growing brood. The chicks spend most of the day just sitting and resting and preening their new plumage, and the outside world is looking more inviting. By 4 weeks of age, the chicks are beginning to test their new wings and are developing quite quickly.
The nestlings, in terms of their development, are going to be on the nest for about 3 to 4 weeks. Males, because they're smaller, are going to realize a faster metabolic rate such that they're going to develop quicker. Their feathers are going to develop much faster, and they actually will be able to leave the nest several days before their sibling sisters. They leave a nest before they can fly out of a nest. As I often say to my students in my ecology courses, nests are not safe places. They are quite the opposite. They are exceedingly dangerous places. To regard them in any other way is not realistic. The faster you can develop, the faster you can get out of the dangerous place, the better off you are. Males have an advantage just by virtue of their small size. And they are capable of leaving a nest and actually moving 10, 20. I saw a male take his first step out of a nest and in a matter of an hour move 100 feet almost away from the nest. In my opinion, that's an adaptive feature. Should danger occur at the nest site, it's a good thing to be able to get off of that platform. Females take a little bit longer, and they may be on a nest from 27, 28, maybe even 29 days later, assume all other things being equal. But the parents continue to bring food back to the nest proper. And so the kids don't, once they can get out of a nest before they can fly, they still have to get back to the nest by jumping, gliding, small flaps, if you will, and because the food is going to be dropped off at the platform. And that'll continue for several weeks. You may see kids being some degree of dependency, some degree of dependent behavior upon the provisioning of the adults for maybe as long as maybe 7, maybe even 8 weeks past when they can actually leave the nest. So that suggests in some instances that those youngsters may be relying upon the adults for an extended period of time. That period of their nesting biology is relatively poorly documented, and I hesitate to generalize too much about it, and with the realization that I could be off a bit. But there's no question in some of these nests, you can, even though the kids might fledge, so to speak, in mid-July, sometimes in early September, you are still seeing those kids hanging around a nest and food begging.
The chicks seem a bit more aggressive at this age, but they're still fairly respectful to one another. Mom and Dad now spend much of their day just hunting for their brood. The chicks are nearly full grown, and this means they require more food resources. In other words, the chicks consume a great deal, and I mean they eat a lot. Okay, you get the idea. With food being such a valuable resource, nothing is wasted. Mom sees an uneaten wing from a previous meal on the side of the nest. She grabs it, plucks the feathers from it, and then proceeds to pick them up and remove them from the nest. Got to keep that nest clean. No poop, no feathers. It's time for another food delivery. Their agility in the trees is astounding. Watching them, it is easy to imagine how the ancestors of birds may have adapted to life in the trees. The chicks are now learning how to feed themselves. Some of the chicks get the hang of it pretty quickly. Others struggle a bit. But maybe the best strategy is to wait for brother or sister to get it started for you. And then take it. If they can't figure it out, it's okay for now. Mom usually returns to divvy up the goods. A few of the chicks have wandered away from the nest. Suddenly, crows alert her to potential danger. Dad is nearby as well. Hidden in the trees, we can see what caused all the ruckus. It's the silhouette of a great horned owl. Like crows, hawks and owls have long been adversaries. While owls like this long-eared owl pose no significant threat to the coops, great horned owls have been known to kill hawks. With the danger past, the chicks resume their daily routine. But Mom stands vigil, just in case. Gaining confidence, the birds start to wander further and further from their nest. Soon they will be flying, attempting to catch prey on their own, and before too long, fending for themselves completely. They have a lot to learn before autumn arrives, and the odds are against them. Autumn rolls around, and across North America, along particular geographical features like mountain ridges and shorelines, large numbers of migrating hawks can be seen. Nestled in the woods near the shores of Lake Michigan is one such location. Each fall for over 50 years, Helmut Mueller and Daniel Berger have been voluntarily trapping and banding raptors at the Cedar Grove Ornithological Station. They sit inside a blind and stare out of a north-facing slit. Peering skyward each year from August through November, they watch for migrating hawks and attempt to lure them into their nets. Dan spots a red-tailed hawk overhead. The hawk folds its wings and begins its controlled descent toward the nets. Got him. He runs out to grab him before he can escape. They trap hundreds of hawks every year at this site, and see many more. This sharp-shinned hawk, the smaller cousin of the Cooper's hawk, gets trapped in one of their many mist nets. Dan retrieves it and takes it inside. Here, Helmut removes another sharp-shin from one of the nets. Sharp-shins, Cooper's hawks, and goshawks make up North America's 3 accipiter species. Like the coops, shins and goshawks are traditionally forest birds and also have broad rounded wings and long tails. Though not considered a true migrant, they do catch their share of Cooper's hawks here. And they have a reputation for being rather cantankerous. The birds are brought inside and each is given a numbered leg band. They record several measurements from the birds like tail length, wing length, and weight. Such data are useful and kept for scientific research. Then the birds are finally released back into the wild. If trapped again, the numbered band can provide useful information about the bird's movements. Good luck, guys!
In regard to the Cooper's hawk biology, or the Cooper's hawk overall, I guess one of the things that strikes me, one of the most poignant things about my investment into this bird's biology, I guess, would be this was an animal that was believed to be on its way out. The biggest known population ecologists in raptor biology would have easily projected that we're going to lose this animal. A very high-profile article published in a high-profile magazine, National Geographic, in 1974, painted a very bleak picture for the welfare of this bird, and its viability certainly seemed in question. And in fact, the title of that paper was "Can the Cooper's Hawk Survive?" ? The writers, Noel and Helen Snyder, basically explicitly implied that it doesn't look good for this bird, as was true of so many birds as a result of environmental contaminants, DDT for instance, and habitat alteration and persecution through shooting. Lo and behold, this bird is thriving in the face of a variety of adversities. Now, admittedly, we banned DDT, and getting that contaminant, that ill, out of the environment undoubtedly helped this bird recover or realize the viability that it now exhibits. But what no one would have predicted would be a forest raptor being so resilient and so flexible in the face of such drastic habitat change, such that now the highest known breeding populations actually occur in the most drastic and altered environment, cities. And it's a lesson to be not so sure about your predictions. Stand back, gather the data, and let's see exactly what we really do have and what we're dealing with.